Hey everyone, Jason here from Off the Beaten Path, picking up from Lake Cobbler Lake Cobbler. So we're heading out on the track that goes from the hut back past the lake to rejoin the main Lake Cobbler Track. As I said on the way in, there's always a little bit of water here. It's never been terribly deep and never been a difficult crossing. Lake there just on the right. As you can see, this embankment is built up quite a bit, and we're back out to the main Lake Cobbler Track. So we're sort of keeping left and heading back east to northeast. If you turn right there, the track does continue, takes you down towards Mount Speculation and then the staircase. Now we've just sort of skipped along the track and we're just east of where the Lake Cobbler Track meets the Lake Cobbler Road. Again, that western section I've shown plenty of times. So we've actually picked up here on the main track, and you can see it starts off fairly easy. And in its current condition, actually, in dry conditions, I wouldn't say any part of the Lake Cobbler Track at the moment is difficult. It's been well and truly graded since the last time I drove it, and there's been some changes too, with some small bypasses added, and not so small. But yeah, this first section, pretty easy drive, up some undulating hills, not overly steep, and the track's basically a two-wheel drive sort of gravel road. This is the first part that's changed, so a bit of a choose your own adventure here. So the right hand section is really scenic and gets some great views, but I've driven that many times. So I of course took the left hand line, which takes you up over the top of this hill. Never having driven this line before because it wasn't really here before. If it was, it certainly wasn't formed up as a designated track the way it is now, and a bit of user error right there in the wrong gear for the hill climb, and we've stalled it. So yeah, starting off in first gear, you don't get too far in first gear with this thing. I think I was probably in third, maybe fourth, and just didn't give it enough revs. But yeah, second gear it'll tick along quite comfortably. Now, apologies if I sound a bit different. I have had a bit of a cold as I'm recording this, which is probably contributing to how the voice recording's sounding. So you can see here we've reached the top of this hill. There's some nice views out to the right, as the text on the screen is just saying. And we're very quickly coming back down here to rejoin the main track. I suspect they've put this in to sort of avoid the big drop-off for people that don't like driving along tracks and they've got a massive big steep drop-off on one side. Yeah, this early part of the Lake Cobbler Track at this western end certainly does feel a bit like a ridgeline track at times. And I actually feel like the alignment of the whole track has changed a bit. I could be wrong, but it certainly felt very different. This western end used to be very rocky, at least in the first couple of sections. And it's certainly not that anymore. And lo and behold, we've got another new little bypass, not perhaps as well defined as the first one, but definitely clearly a track. So I decided to take that as well. And it's a nice short little bypass, this one, just up onto this ridge here, where you get some great views. You can see clearly here it's had gravel and rock put down, particularly on this section, which is quite a lot steeper than it looks on camera. Not a difficult drive, just slow and steady. And obviously quite a lot easier had you chosen to not take the bypass like I did and just stayed on the main track. As I said, when I was driving this, I couldn't get over the condition of the track here, and when I say the condition of the track, I mean how good it was. And there's lots of sections like through here where you get some great views into the distance. And again, working our way back down this particular hill here. Plenty of trees, reasonably close to the track. But as I said, nothing in this section that is going to make it particularly difficult anymore, which is just, yeah, so different from how this track used to be. It used to have some very steep rocky sections at this western end. The eastern end was typically a clay base and could be quite boggy and slippery when wet. Obviously we're not going to see that today because the conditions are very dry, but it certainly has been that way in the past. And you can see as we're heading down this hill here, we've got another track coming in from the left-hand side, and that is Williams Logging Road. One of these days I'll have to drive that. I've actually never driven Williams Logging Road. It joins from the Lake Cobbler Road to the Lake Cobbler Track and bypasses some of the early sections that used to be steep and rocky. Consequently, I've never driven it. I always enjoyed those early sections, and lo and behold, here we've got another bypass. So I've taken the right hand line. The main track, I believe, was the original left hand line, so headed up here to see where this hill is actually going to take us. And this section is very much a ridgeline track, and I really don't believe it used to be like this. Certainly these bypasses were simply not here. And certainly taking us up here to a nice little hilltop. You don't always get heaps of views. Every section through here is a little bit different because there's a lot of trees, as you can see. But it's a great little drive through here. I've driven this track many, many times, and in dry conditions, and particularly the way it is now, it's not a difficult track. The way it's rated on HEMA, that's for sure. Certainly used to be. And again, nice steep descent here, but nothing difficult about it. And you can see the track ahead as we're working our way down here. And yeah, that was actually a snake on the track there, if you're wondering why did I drive off the track like that. That was the reason for heading off the track the way that I did. And you can see at the bottom of this this descent, we're actually rejoining the main track, so that bypass that we took off and the main track sort of continued on the left, at least I think that was the main track, we're rejoining it here. Nice little open section here that gets you some good views out to the right, and you can see there a bit of an informal little camp area that people have used at different times. And lo and behold, we're climbing again. So that's the thing throughout this Lake Cobbler track, you're going to find you're going up and down and up and down, and it certainly keeps it interesting. A lot of the times like this, you can see the track ahead on the next hill and get a sense of where you're going to be heading. Yeah, a lot of this western end is very drivable and well worth checking out. And it's a great way to have an alternative exit if you've gone up to check out Lake Cobbler, which is well worth the drive, and you perhaps come in on the Lake Cobbler Road from Chestnut or something and you want to exit a different way. Exiting out through the Lake Cobbler track is a great option. And as you'll see when we get to the end of this track and head out, there's some great camping options along the Abbeyard Rd as well. And again, very much a ridgeline track through here. You can see the terrain falling away both sides as we work our way along here and climb up over these little hills that are along each part of the track. And every time you crest one of these hills, the track ahead of you opens up a little bit and you can see where you're heading next. Certainly making steady progress through here, and again one of those long sections of track where you can see quite a long way ahead of where you are. Now before you get to the halfway mark, which is where the Dan Buffalo Divide track joins the Lake Cobbler track, there is a helipad area or lookout area that we're not too far away from getting to now, I think. And yeah, as you can see there on the screen, we're actually climbing up to the helipad now. And again, this used to be probably a rockier, looser climb than it is now. It's just a gravel hill at the moment. No doubt that'll change over time. But yeah, if this is your first time coming along the Lake Cobbler track, it's a great little spot here to stop stretch the legs and enjoy the view. I just turn the car around here to sort of show you guys the view. Having driven this track a number of times and stopped here plenty of times, I didn't feel the need to stop myself today. And you can see even to the north you got some great views. And just continuing on now on the Lake Cobbler Track. And again heading back down this hill as this track undulates its way across the countryside. This used to be a lot rockier with the odd little rock stepping thing in it, but yeah, it's certainly been graded and there's none of that anymore. Dry conditions like this, most of this track now is honestly a two-wheel drive sort of situation. That will change over time with traffic, of course. The little short bypass there, I can see that one just rejoin the track in 10 or 20 metres right there, so I didn't bother with that one. Yeah, the track condition at the moment does allow you to keep a pretty good pace along most sections of this track. Fallen timber there that's been nicely cleared off the track. We've left more than the obligatory 2.3 metre gap, so we've reached the halfway mark here. So that's the Dan Buffalo Divide track on the left. That used to be a bit of an informal sort of turn off that was easier to access, and the actual main original turn off is up here where the sign is. Used to be a bit of a hairpin if you were coming along the Lake Cobbler Track and you wanted to turn left onto the Dan Buffalo Divide track, so they've obviously cut that other access in to make that a little bit easier. So yeah, 20 k's from the Lake Cobbler Road to the eastern end of the Lake Cobbler Track, and the Dan Buffalo Divide track that we just passed there marks the halfway mark, or 10 kilometres along this track. Now the eastern end here, which you'll see more so once we get to the sort of the last half of the eastern end, it's a reasonably steady descent back down into the valley, and the track changes. It's got a clay base, and that's the part that is sort of known for developing a few really soft boggy spots and getting quite slippery, particularly when it's wet. But dry like it is today, it's hard packed, plenty of traction, and nothing at all to worry about. So this track's not seasonally closed, but you will, if you enter from the eastern end, you will see a sign there saying dry weather only. But they don't enforce that by seasonally closing this particular track. Some of these sections are a little bit more enclosed with the bush, as you can see, certainly compared to the early sections. And again, some great views out there to the right hand side. Reasonably close to the tracks, and a little bit dustier this section of track. You can see the dust trail behind the car there, but as I said earlier, the current track conditions certainly allows you to make pretty good time. And unlike some of the other tracks, you know, if you stay in the middle of the track, you're not going to pick up pinstripes on your vehicle. Yeah, these days it really is just a nice drive and a great way to connect from Lake Cobbler through to Abbeyard and then up to Lake Buffalo or onto other tracks. Even if you wanted to head across to Mount Selwyn, you can certainly do that from here as well when you get to the end. Drop off on that side of the track, and you do find that along here that it changes from side to side depending on where you are on the track, that there'll be a drop off on either the driver or passenger side. As I said earlier, a little bit bushier this end, with the bushes getting a bit more closer to the track, but still not at the point where you can't avoid them. Rockier through that section, but you know, it's a small section and it's not that rocky, to be honest. It's more like large gravel. So given it's been a fair while since I've had a Lake Cobbler track video on the channel, I have included a lot of this section. You can see this is where the bushfires came through back in 2019, 2020. Certainly a lot of regrowth, and you can see how the track has changed now. We're getting to that eastern end, we're descending into the valley, and the track base is much more a clay base. And it looks just like a dirt track now rather than a gravel or rocky track. This is a section that, when there's been a bit of rain, tends to get very slippery and very wet. Obviously not the case today, as I've said, but something to keep in mind if you're heading up this way and going to take this track. I think just coming up here, you can see this section through here's definitely been soft in recent times, but certainly not the case today. So that is something to keep in mind with the Lake Cobbler track. If it's been raining and you don't want to tackle something that's going to be wet, soft and slippery, probably don't tackle this eastern end. You can still drive the track, but maybe exit via down Buffalo Divide track, which is a nice drive in its own right anyway. And there is a video of that track on the channel. So yeah, with the conditions today, keeping a good pace along this section of the track. And you can see we are sort of trending down. This eastern end of the track does fairly consistently descend because we are heading down towards the valley and the Abbeyard Road. And you can see the erosion channels on the surface of the track here. You've got the humps in there to try and divert the water off the track, but again, the water runs down here, and I have seen those erosion channels get big enough to lose a tyre in. Again, certainly not the case right now. It's very hard packed and being graded, but a few good rainstorms and they will certainly develop and get a lot larger. Long-time watchers might remember me coming along this section in the Pajero a couple of years ago. I had Mark and Jared with me that time, and it was their first time on this track, and I was sort of paying attention and talking to them on the radio more so than watching where I was driving, and dropped the back wheel and the padge into a nice soft little boggy section here, and was probably buried down to the lower control arms. Nothing a quick winch didn't solve, but certainly easy to get into trouble on this section of track if you're not paying attention when it's wet, soft and slippery. And you can see there we're definitely getting towards the valley. A few kilometres more to go and we'll be at the bottom of the Lake Cobbler Track. And again, there's some reasonable evidence here that the track has been a little soft at different times. Again, some evidence there of some of those little erosion gullies starting to form, particularly just through there. But at the moment, yeah, it's all pretty hard packed and nothing you're going to lose a tyre in. As we're just working our way consistently down. It's a fairly steady descent to the bottom end of the track down here. And in dry conditions like this, it's a pretty easy drive. As I said, that would change markedly. You can imagine if this was wet and slippery, how different it'd be trying to get down here safely or trying to get back up, in fact. I did run into a guy from Queensland a couple of years ago on Billy Goat Bluff, and he'd come across here with the family just after a week of rain, and he was pretty adamant there needed to be a warning sign on this track. Which is just how different the conditions can be. But yeah, we're reaching the eastern end here, where it joins onto the Abbeyard Rd. And this is the Manigum campground from memory. There's a number of bush campgrounds, as they're called, along the Abbeyard Rd here, right on the river. So this is the McIver Bush Camp, and you can see the rivers right there. So just pulled in for a quick stop there, stretched the legs, and then we got mobile again, and we're heading north on the Abbeyard Rd. So again, that's the end of the track, but I've just included the exit road here A few minutes of footage on this. For those of you that have never been down here, you'll see how accessible it is. Again, this road's been graded. It's always been a road, not a track, but it used to be really corrugated, and I used to hate driving it because it was just corrugations and vibrations. That's certainly not the case at the moment. It wasn't when I drove this in November of 2024. The road was in quite good condition. There wasn't a lot of corrugations or anything, and you could maintain a pretty good pace on the sections of the road where you had good visibility. It is very twisty along here, but you do get some cracking views of the Buffalo River as you work your way along here. You saw the sign just there in the rear-facing camera. Another one of the bush camps just there. The further you get out, the more sort of grassed and manicured those campsites become, as you'll see. I do capture a few of those on camera, and you can see the Buffalo River down there. It's a really scenic drive along here. This is most definitely a two-wheel drive road. So if you were heading into this area and you wanted to bring a caravan in and use that as a base camp, this would be a great spot. You can come in along this road, stop at any one of these bush camps, and then use your four-wheel drive to head up to places like Mount Selwyn and Lake Cobbler and return to base here, and you've got this two-wheel drive road to get your van out. Again, it is a little bit twisty and narrow in sections, but you can certainly bring a van down in here without too much difficulty, that's for sure. And some more views there of the Buffalo River. And yeah, opening out into a wide open sort of track in some of these sections. And yeah, with the track or road conditions as they were, you can certainly maintain a good pace. As I said, on those straight sections where you've got good visibility. A lot of this road through here is very much like this, an embankment on one side and a decent drop off on the other. And you can throw up a bit of dust at times as well. As you can see there in the dust trail behind the 76. Definitely one where you want to keep an eye out for oncoming traffic. A lot of the corners like this you can sort of see across and see if anyone's coming, but the blind corners like this, not so much. Although you can see how the track heads back out and around. It's certainly making better time along this road than we used to. Many times I had to take this pretty slow just due to the corrugations. I'm sure that'll happen again over time. But at the moment it's not an issue. And with the river pretty much right there for a lot of this Abbeyard Rd, it's quite a scenic little drive in its own right. And as I said, there's a number of campsites along here, probably 4 or 5, all marked on any of the decent high country maps. And if you're looking for a more grassy campsite, like obviously McIver's very much a bush camp. It's close to the road there and pretty much a dirt base. You'll see some of these ones a little bit further out are really nice. Definitely a bit of a hill on the left hand side there where the road's been cut in and the river's on the right. Again, right throughout this road, you're never really too far from the river. can see sections like this, the road is much wider, so it does change a lot throughout the journey. And just coming up on the Tea Tree campground here on the right hand side there, you can see a few people in there. Nice grass campsite, long drop toilet, fenced off from the road a little bit, and there's a few people in there camping, so that's one of the cracking campsites right on the Buffalo River here along the Abbeyard Rd, and super accessible. Great spot to have a base to, as I said earlier, head up to places like Lake Cobbler, Mount Selwyn. You could even head straight into Morningata from here if you wanted to on a day trip, quite comfortably. Again, reasonably dusty on this section of road. And coming up here on the next one, which is the Blades Bush Campground on the right hand side there. Again, central road, nice grassy campsites right on the river. And I've actually pulled in here in order to air down. Not too far past the, I should say air up. Not too far past here we get back onto the bitumen. So it's a great little spot to air up. And as I said, I've included a bit of the exit here. So this is Lake Buffalo, just south of Myrtleford. Back on the bitumen and heading into Myrtleford before heading home. Again, it's a really nice drive past Lake Buffalo here. This particular time there was a good amount of water in the lake as well, which was great to see. This road sort of wends its way down the western side of Lake Buffalo and also across the dam wall. There is a dam on the northern end of the lake where they let the water out, being the main water reservoir for Myrtleford and other surrounding towns. A few sections like this are nice and twisty. And as I said, it's not too long. That is Mount Buffalo that you're looking at there. It's not too long before we reach the northern end of the lake and we're heading across the dam wall. You can see the river outflowing to the north there on the left hand side. There's not a lot of these dams where you can actually drive across them, and this is one of the ones that you can still drive across it, which is pretty cool. And from here it's a short drive into town. When I'm finishing a trip at a reasonable time like this one was, always great to stop off at one of the bakeries in Myrtleford. This particular trip I called into Heiner's Bakery. If you're still watching at this part of the video, thanks for watching, thanks for staying to the end, I really appreciate it. As always guys, please like this video if you liked it, leave a comment down below, and think about adding the Lake Cobbler Track to your list of tracks that you want to get out there and tackle, because at the moment it is very, very drivable and Lake Cobbler's a great spot to visit. Finishing up here at Heiner's Bakery in Myrtleford. See you in the next video guys.